Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of the Rich and Turbo Heavy Half Hour. You just get rich today. Find me on X at FuzzDoomRip, all the socials at rich.paiva. As a Doom Charts contributor doing reviews for Musapedia of Metal, I'm excited to have the Houston, Texas band Stone Nomads with us today. We have Jude and Jon. How you guys doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having us.
Doing all
Excellent,
right.
excellent.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for the flexibility. I know we went back and forth a couple times. I'm just very excited that we get to have you guys on the show to talk about, amongst other things, the new record that just dropped on November 21st, if I'm not mistaken, called Empires of Stone on Ripple Music. Hearing some pretty amazing things from folks out there. I got to hear it a little bit early, so I've been spending a lot of time with the record. Generally, Jon and Jude, what are you hearing from fans of the band? What they think about the new record?
Jude, why don't you run with that?
uh, you know, that's a good question, man. We've heard mostly positive actually just positive feedback all around. I think people were a little bit surprised how heavy we went with the second album at the gates. And then when we started playing this new record for people, they were like, "Oh, this kind of mixes." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It kind of mixes the styles of the first two albums kind of together. So there's some groovier stuff on this one that kind of like we had on the first record, and then some really heavy stuff kind of like we had on the second record. I think it's people recognize if they've seen us live, like, oh yeah, this new record, that's what Stone Nomads are like live. Like we
Right.
have some groove and some heaviness.
And was that what you guys were going for? Kind of a like the best of both worlds kind of combo of the first two record
Yeah,
kind of vibe,
it really
or
was.
okay?
Most definitely. I mean, the second record was a departure. We knew that, it was somewhat calculated, and we were at a point where we had to make a decision. We were like, are we ready to dive into what ended up being Empires? And we had a lot of that material written already, but we also had all this really dark stuff written, and we were like, we just kind of feel with where the band's at, where we're at on personal levels, and everything we're going through, that the second album was something that needed to happen. It was a good stepping stone to get us from point A to point B. That being said, Empires is where we wanted to go. And we've known that, that's something that, when we kind of started the band, the vision of what we wanted to do was this. So we're really happy with it across the board. The songs, the production, the response has been great. So yeah, it's going really good.
Excellent.
As John had mentioned, like some of these songs had been floating around for 4 years, 5 years since the beginning of the band, and we'd even played a few live. We just hadn't had the right. I mean, truth be told, we just hadn't had the right drummer in place to pull it off.
I was gonna. That is a very.
Yeah.
I was going to get to that later, but since you opened up that door, I want to talk about it because I was listening to the record today in preparation for our talk, and I've had it for a while, the digital for a while, but today, for whatever reason, the drumming on this record like jumped out at me. I'm like, holy shit, what's going on here? And when I look at like most of your bios and stuff, it's you two as kind of the main guys, and then now you have this young buck who is the drummer in the band, but also who. So tell me a little bit about what you just said about the drumming, why you weren't quite ready for these songs in the situation, and who played and what this looks like going forward for Stone Nomads.
Well, I'll jump in and say, one of the things that makes Ben, our guy, is obviously he's got the technical ability. That's an important part, right? That everyone would assume, but he also gets it. He gets the vision. He's a young guy. He's half our age, but he really is kind of an old soul in that he knows the music inside and out. It's like he grew up with it. His parents, raised him on it. I think he went to a Megadeth concert in the womb. So he was kind of baptized by metal. So the kid's grown up with, the same kind of upbringing musically that we had. So by the time he gets up into, you know, his late teens, you know, he's a force to be reckoned with. You know, he's got the chops, he's got the understanding, he's got the groove, he's kind of got all the components that you need to, you know, to do what we're doing. So I think him bringing all that to the table was exactly what we were looking for someone to be able to pull all this stuff off and say, okay, we have arrived. This is the vision. This is what we're all about.
Yeah, I mean, and your other album, you had Espen Williams playing drums, no slouch, right? Did he play?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Very capable guy.
Yeah, capable guy. Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting that, but never going to be like the firm member of Stone Nomads, right? He's a hired gun at that point, right?
He's a hired gun. So yeah, you know, he's got you know, a month at best to work with the material and try to figure out who we are and what we're doing. You know, whereas with Ben, it's like, okay, you know, day one comes and you know, we're gonna woodshed this shit in the practice room until we get it. You know, until it sounds exactly how we want it to sound. And I mean, the use of someone like Esben, it's one of those things that you know, when you need that, it's crucial. You know, to have a guy, an ace in the hole like that can come in and knock out a whole album in a month. And we're forever grateful, you know, that he was able to do that. But it's a whole nother level to bring a guy in that becomes part of the band, you know, and really the material becomes his, you know, whether he was there for the initial concept of writing it, he made it his own. He brought his force to it. He digested it. And then what you hear is really the work of all three of us together.
Yeah, love it. You can hear the cohesiveness in this record for sure. Like you guys sound like a full unit, right. and I think that, you know, I think it sounds like that's what you were going for there. One of the things I want to also mention, "Desolate Sands" is just such an amazing song, and it goes in lots of different directions and is. I don't want to say a departure, but it's definitely a standout track, in my opinion, on this record. I don't know if others have told you that or not, but to me, it's one of my favorite songs of not just the record, but of the year. I think it's just a great song. If you can give me a little background on that one, would love to hear how that one came to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's a song, you know, Jude kind of alluded to earlier that's been around for a long time. We wrote that song when we released Fields of Doom, and it was a song that we purposely held back, not so much from, you know, the drummer standpoint on that one. It was like, this is a really important song for the band. We know that when we release this, it's got to be at a moment where it makes sense. It's got to be on an album where it fits cohesively, and it really, to us, it did not fit on Fields of Doom. And so when we get to the point of At the Gates, and, you know, you hear that record, it's a real dark, you know, very, you know, black sounding album. And Desolate is it definitely is not that. It's got a somberness to it and a melancholy, but it's a totally different kind of vibe. And we just felt that it really was time. It fit in perfectly in the album. I loved it as a you know, a side two, kind of a real important song on side two. Yeah, we're really, really ecstatic with how it turned out.
And vocally, Jon, what is it like going from the you know, the kind of from your gut almost growl to singing, if you will? You know, to me, it's just amazing that everybody who I talk to who does kind of that, just, you know, guttural from the bowels of hell growl are just so cool and soft spoken and nice when I interview them. But I just wonder, like,
because we get all the demons out of
you've already released them.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's accused us of being nice, man.
We just met.
Well,
you
cheers
know,
to that.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
But how do you like when you go into, you know, writing, and when you know, even when you go into live, how do you prepare for that? Do you know when you're writing that this is going to be more of the guttural kind of screamy growls, or that you're going to sing, or does that kind of work itself out in the rehearsal room or in the writing? How does that get done?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, as far as replicating it live is muscle memory. So the way that I do it as far as the writing process and the recording process is totally independent of playing live. So we're not a band that gets into a room and jams it out. We sit here and, in this space for me, and Jude's got his little spot at his house, and we write our stuff. Sometimes we send things back and forth, but for the most part, we kind of write independently, and we get something to a near finish rate before we share it. And then once it gets to that point, then it's the ball that gets kicked around a little bit. But kind of going back to what you were asking about with the vocal preparation, a lot of times when I'm in the writing phase, I don't think about performing it live. So once we go through recording and getting it all together, then we're like, okay, guys, we got to play this live. And that first practice, when you actually go try to belt the shit out, it's like, whoa, what did I do? Yeah.
Why did
So
I choose to do this?
Exactly. So you end up having to go back and figure out, how do you do this live in the midst of a set, and not blow out your voice, and be able to kind of tone it down and get down to the point where you can sing delicately and go back up. So with Desolate, it's another reason why we sat on it, was to be able to give it time. We've played that song live now. Gosh, what do you think, Jude? 40, 50 times, something like that?
Yeah, maybe the last 3 years we played it live.
Yeah.
Almost every
So
set.
we had a lot of time to kind of work on honing it in. So when we play, it's usually the track that people come up after the show and talk to us about. They're like, wow, we love your band, but man, we've never heard the song. We didn't see that coming. It's such a beautiful song. How do I get a copy of it? That kind of thing. So yeah, it's something that had to be worked out, and typically anything where you have a lot of dynamic range in the vocals, that's the case.
I as I was listening to it today, I was thinking, like, another Texas band, Pantera, and like what they did with Cemetery Gates, and kind of that, that
Exactly.
kind of vibe to it is kind of, as a child of that era, or coming up listening to music then, that's the vibe I got with both the placement and just kind of the different, between the heaviness of the rest of it. Not sure. I'm sure you guys are Pantera fans in some capacity.
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah, I mean, that particular song, or a song like This Love, or you can go back to the old Metallica, Sanitarium. Those type of songs were definitely influential in the structuring of the song, for sure. I mean, we're all fans of all that stuff. We grew up on it, so yeah, it definitely had its part in playing a part in the song.
Jude, I think I interrupted you. I think you were going to say something, or maybe you were just moving around. Were you going to say something to
No,
that?
I was just not specifically about Desolate Sands. I was going to talk about vocal approach, because on this album, the 2 songs that I do lead vocals, but the vocal style that I use is very different than the other 2 records. And I didn't plan originally to like, hey, I'm going to sing differently on this record than I do on the others. But when I wrote the songs, I was like, dang, man, if Tom G. Warrior from Celtic Frost was singing these songs, they would sound a lot better. And I was like, I've got a little bit of that in me. I mean, we've had a death metal project we've done a couple of times, and so I've got some death metal growls down in me. So I was like, that would sound better with this song than what I normally do. So like Malderas and Death Adder, that's it's very influenced. Just the song sounded like it needed it. So that's what I did.
No, I like that. The thing, a couple things about you guys. Number one, you've been a band for, this version of you guys has been a band for just a short amount of time, right? I mean, Stone Nomads has been around for how
5 years.
You're right.
And with Ben now, it's a little over 2.
And 3 records into that, right? 3
Right.
full. So that's a lot of output for bands. Sometimes we don't see records for, half a decade from other bands, in between. Um, I know you had these songs, some of these songs were older ones, but, has it been specifically thought out that you didn't want to be a band that sat around? You wanted to be a band that was very active and kept putting stuff out. Not to say you're not taking your time with what you're writing, but like just want to stay out there, because sometimes bands can get forgotten. I think there's a band called Planet Desert that just dropped their first album in 14 years. I don't know who they are. Everyone's like very excited about it, but I don't know who they are because I wasn't really paying attention 14 years ago, right? So is that a cognizant thought that you guys have to kind of stay out there and stay active and continue your creativity and your output?
We don't like to
100%.
sit around, man. Yeah, like we don't want to spend a couple of months just, hey, let's have some downtime. And Jon and I just don't operate that way. We can't. Like this right now, as we are currently talking, is probably the longest we've gone without practicing, and it might be almost 3 weeks. Like if we take time off, like after a tour, we'll take a week off, and then it's back to writing, back to practicing, because you never know. I mean, we've said this on other interviews. Like if Elder calls up and says, "Hey, we're going to be in town. We need someone to open up tomorrow," we're the band that will say yes because we're prepared. And we've done that before. We don't like to sit. Jon?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, prolific's a heavy word to throw around, but I'd say that we're pretty prolific with songwriting. I mean, as we stand right now, we probably have enough material written for 2 more albums. Now that doesn't mean we're just going to sit around for the next 2 years while we, record 2 albums. We're going to write some more stuff, and whatever works in with that material and the vibe of the album that we are, kind of creating, it may or may not be part of that. But we always kind of have this growing backlog or catalog of tunes that we write. And not only for Stone Nomads, but I mean, me and Jude both write different types of music that get kind of thrown aside and penciled in for some kind of side project down the road, years later. So, I mean, we love this, man. This is our life, we live for music. We've kind of, grown up that way. And, I don't know, if you took my guitar away, I'd probably, I'd probably just go live in the woods and become some crazy dude. I need it.
It's interesting because I was chatting with a band that I went to go see live that I'm a big fan of. We were just chatting about like signing to labels and what labels look for, and like I think one of the things, and just chatting and having interviews with other kind of label owners, is like that consistency. Is this a real thing? Is this like a band, or is this a hobby, or is this a band that's going to be here in 3 years, or are you going to implode at some point, right? And the labels I talk to, there's a lot of bands that they love, but they're just not sure, like that there's another album in them or something else is coming. And I think that being out there and being consistent like that probably helps. That's a nice transition to now you guys are on Ripple Music, which is very cool. The best label in heavy rock. I love all you guys out there, but Ripple is my favorite. And you guys have played Ripple Fest, right?
Yeah.
How did you get hooked up with Todd, and how did you wind up recording for Ripple?
So, I mean, Ripple had been on our radar from, pretty much day one. I mean, if we're being honest, like we have a high level respect for Ripple. I mean, they're definitely in our space, in my opinion, the best, to do what they do. So we reached out to Todd early on, and
I sent him Fields of Doom when we had the demos for it. I was like, "Hey,
right,
check this out. What do you think?"
Yeah, he said that he was interested in it, but I mean, one of the major things for him was it was only 6 songs. Even though it was over a 30-minute album, it was a little light for what they like to do. They like to have at least 8, and B, the release schedule was already completely full, for over a year. So it was just kind of like, it wasn't the right time. So we went forward and hooked up with Gravitoid, which actually, funny enough, Todd had recommended us to do. So we released the two albums through Gravitoid, and when it came time for number three for Empires, we had already talked about the fact that we needed something a little bit bigger. We needed a label with a little bit more robust support, um, worldwide reach, European presence as far as shipping and things like that. And so we went on tour and we kind of said, okay, we'll pencil this in to talk about when we get back. And, we'll start sending out all the emails to labels and all that kind of shit. And so we played Maryland Doomfest, and I guess Todd's partner, Pope John, was there. And we made quite an impression from what I was told. And so he called Todd and said, "Hey, we got to sign these guys," and pretty much the rest is history from there.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's I love hearing the stories of how Todd and Ripple come to sign bands and come to a lot of the labels. I talked to Jad from Blues Funeral, just like how the word of mouth from like other people who just happen to see you at Maryland Doomfest or just knows these guys and know that they're killer, and like the small little scene of how that kind of gets around is very cool. And yeah, and that kind of interaction where you just saw you at Maryland Doomfest, blew you away. Let's sign them, and that's. I mean, there's obviously more that goes into it than that, but like
yeah, a little bit more that goes into it. For
but
sure.
just like the whole scene thing is something that I yearn for from back in the day when I was going to a bunch of hardcore shows, and there was this kind of very similar ethos with bands. And yeah, exactly. It's I'm not wearing my Krishna beads anymore going to shelter shows, but there's still that kind of that camaraderie, that kind of heavy underground kind of thing that you see with a lot of these bands, and I think it's very cool.
It was a natural fit for us because me and Jude both came from the hardcore scene in the '90s.
Okay, so yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, that's exactly how it was. The thing now is, this with technology and everything the way it is, and our phones and the internet and social media, everything's so much more global. So it's the opportunities are bigger, which is great. The downside is that the noise and the chatter is also bigger, and the pool and the sea of things that you have to swim through to get to the top, to get heard, basically,
Yeah.
Is a lot more difficult. But having that scene built and having that kind of, it's almost like a machine, that helps cycle everything through and get out to the world. It's awesome.
It's interesting. It's different, but it's kind of the same, Rich, because as you were mentioning the hardcore thing, like yeah, like we were part of the Northwest Harris County crew, and we hung out. Like it was that whole everybody had their own crew, but we all got together at the hardcore shows. We went through all that stuff. Nowadays it's a bit different, but it's kind of the same. Like when we went to Maryland Doomfest, there were people that I had connected with online through this music scene that I got to see them in the flesh, and but it was, we had already built a relationship, so it was like, hey, there's WTF Chuck, what's up Chuck, and then we hang out, and it's cool. The same thing last year when we went to Planet Desert Rock just to go and hang out in Vegas. There were all these people that we knew from connecting online. So it was like the family got back together for a reunion, but we weren't really, like we didn't live in the same place, but we all got together and had a good time.
Love that.
Fest is like that too.
Love it.
Yeah, 100%.
It's very cool, and it's kind of why I'm drawn to. It's also why I do the show too, because you mentioned like kind of wading through. There's so much. Like as a Doom Charge contributor, if you saw the amount of promos that come through my email on in a day, it's ridiculous. And it's hard for someone who's not as psychotic as I am with my Excel spreadsheets and a job that allows me to have music playing in the background for people to get to more than a couple albums in maybe a week, right? So that's exactly why I kind of do this show, because I want the bands who I love to be heard as much as my little thing can make that happen. Because there is so much, like you said, like anybody could put a Bandcamp page out there and post something, and then say I have a band and I'm good to go. It's kind of getting through all that noise, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask the question that Turbo wanted me to ask about the car that's in your music video, for The Devil Lives in Texas. He specifically was asking about the car, and I have not seen the video. He asked me this at the last minute, saying he wasn't about to make it, but I need to ask you about what car is in that video.
Okay, I think what he's talking about is at the beginning of the song, there is the sound of an old diesel truck turning on, but it's not actually in the video. There's not technically like a true video for it.
Okay.
It's a visualizer video. I'm sure you're familiar.
That's the one I saw, and I wasn't sure if I missed the actual video that he was talking about. So that is an old diesel truck that's starting up? Is that? Yeah,
it's an old diesel truck starting up.
Okay.
And it is not my truck, but
Turbo and I have this.
Definitely, it achieved the effect we wanted. So
Turbo and I have this thing where like 50% of the time he hears something in a song and he asks and he's wrong. So I'm keeping score of when he hears something that he's right, or it could be an instrument, it could be a sound, it could be anything. So I wanted to make sure that I asked that question. I wanted to ask you guys, because you mentioned like if Elder calls up and you guys are ready to go. You know, I was looking at your Bandcamp. Your Bandcamp, I think it was for for this record. Some of the bands that you guys have opened for or played with is it's crazy. Some of them that are called out on here. Do you have a favorite band that you guys played with, whether it's favorite or the craziest or anything that you would call out as the most memorable band that you guys were open for, given the very impressive list of ones that are shown here?
It's a really good question.
It's
Jude, go. Let me think about that.
Very simple for me. It's a tie. Crowbar. It's not Crowbar. They're good. They're fine. Conan is like one of my favorite bands, and I've been listening to Conan for a long time. So to get to share the stage with Conan personally was really cool, because I just really like that band. Right. The other one, and that's why it was on the tip of my tongue, was Elder, because they played flawlessly. Like, I don't like them as much as I like Conan, but they didn't make a mistake. There wasn't a tempo waiver, nothing. They played perfect.
It was perfection. It was crazy to see. I mean, we've both obviously seen a lot of bands over the years. I mean, God, at this point, between the two of us, definitely in the thousands. And I mean, that Elder show that we played just blew us away. I mean, everyone there was blown away. I mean, it was such a perfect performance. It's hard to disagree with Jude. I mean, those two bands were just so phenomenal live. And also as people, they were really, really great. I mean, just awesome, down to earth people. I mean, you couldn't find friendlier guys, and they're very prolific bands in what they do. I mean, they kind of own their space. You know what I mean? There's no one that does what they do. I mean, they're, at least for my money, they're the top of what they do. The only one I'd throw in there
would be 1998, playing with Agnostic Front.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome.
With Vinny Stigma and Roger and that was actually the original lineup too. So you had Kabula on bass. And God, I forget the drummer's name.
Jimmy Coletti guy on
Jimmy Coletti, yeah. That was funny.
80s.
That was a lot of fun.
I got us off topic there.
I was gonna say playing The Obsessed was a great show, because Wino's such a legend, and I mean, out of all those shows that we brought up, that show was the smallest. I mean, so here's the most iconic guy that I mean, yeah, you could say Max Cavalera, of course, and Kirk. I mean, those guys are gods at what they do. And it was a gigantic venue, and it was an awesome experience. But to play like a tiny little club, like a 125 cap room with Wino, and hang out all night and just pick his brain and just, I mean, just the most down to earth guy. It was such a cool experience.
I've somehow had Wino on my show twice this year, once about his solo record, once about his new project. And it's amazing to me that he gave me like 2 hours of his time to do that. Got to see Conan last week with my new favorite band, Florist, opening up.
Oh yeah. Great band, great guys too.
It's amazing also, like the rhythm section of Florist were just two hardcore dudes who were like, I'm sick of playing hardcore. I want to do something with a little more atmosphere, a little bit more, space, a little bit more stuff going on. Was that coming from that scene? Did you have that similar musical thought process, or is this just kind of where stuff went?
It's a little bit different for the two of us because we kind of came to hardcore from two different paths. So Jude could talk about his path through punk rock. My path was through metal. So I was a metalhead first that got into hardcore because, I mean, let's face it, by the year 1995, metal was pretty much dead, and hardcore, with the exception of, Crowbar was a big band for me. I think in 94, my two favorite albums were Live Plus One and Scratch the Surface from Sick of It All.
Oh, Scratch the Surface.
And that was kind of my trajectory of transitioning into hardcore, because I had been exposed to Agnostic Front and all that stuff too. So I had the background of that. And the more that this new metallic hardcore stuff started coming out, the more that I was liking everything. And really, it just kind of enveloped me. Now, while all that's happening, I'm still a metalhead. I'm still listening to bands like Paradise Lost, and I'm listening to my old Trouble records when no one's watching.
You just couldn't admit it back then, right?
Yeah,
that was the difference.
They wouldn't let you. They maybe let you get away with Paradise Lost, but Trouble might be a hard one to explain.
Too slow, man.
Yeah. But, a lot of things change, and it's funny because I've talked to so many people about this, but when Down released NOLA, I mean, a lot of people from all walks of life that listen to heavy music kind of got tuned back into like, oh, whoa.
Yeah.
This is different. This is cool. This harkens us back to, Sabbath and some of the earlier root sounds, but bringing it forward in a different way. You know what I mean? And so at the same time, you have bands like Fu Manchu and Clutch that are also doing something different but similar. So, I mean, we were kind of exposed to that wave of it in the late 90s. And it was kind of just one of those things where, as you go through into the 2000s, more and more of the better music that was coming out was, what we now know as stoner rock, sludge metal, doom metal. The old thrash bands were releasing some cool stuff. Testament had some great albums. Exodus had some great albums. But I mean, I guess maybe with age, I don't know. I started gravitating more towards the slower, heavier stuff, and discovering bands like Sleep, Acid Bath, and finally stumbling into the heavy underground, like, probably about close to 10 years ago now. And then that opened up a whole nother world. I'm like, oh shit, all this exists? I mean, you gotta be kidding me. That's crazy. So yeah, the path for me kind of went through that whole thing.
I probably saw Sick of It All on the Scratch the Surface tour and Built to Last probably like 6 times. Like it,
Wow.
and every time it was just like, it just blew me away.
Maybe.
And
Oh yeah.
just craziness in these little tiny clubs and just people going crazy. It was just, And I wake up every morning hoping that I don't get bad news about Lou and given his cancer fight and everything. It's awful. But Scratch the Surface for me was one of my favorites in college. They were anywhere within like a 4-hour radius. I'm going to see Sick of It All. That was my stuff. Jude, Jon mentioned you came up kind of from the punk rock ranks. How did you wind up here?
I was a big fan of like late 70s, early 80s LA punk music, like X and the Germs, and later Fear and Black Flag and all of that. So that's my start into heavy music. And so I didn't really start listening to any metal until I met Jon in high school. And he introduced me to bands like Slayer and stuff like that.
The bad influence, Jon.
It was totally bad influence. All of a sudden I started doing this. Yeah. Started using this hand motion. And I actually listened to a lot of pop punk and stuff previous to that too, like the Descendants and all that stuff, like NoFX and everything that was coming out in the early 90s.
Same.
But then I started just listening to a lot more metal once Jon and I kind of started hanging out, and it was like he was a metal guy, I was a punk guy, and we kind of met in the middle when oh my gosh, I'm blanking on a bunch of mid-90s hardcore, but that's what kind of did it. And then later when like Hatebreed came out and stuff, and All Out War,
Marauder, Strife.
I was just listening to the Marauder Master Killer. I got a copy of that on vinyl the other day, and I have a memory of seeing them open for, I think it was Typo Negative and Biohazard at this little club in Long Island. And the song Life is Pain stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
From like, and I'm like, why do I not have this Marauder record? Oh, it's because it's $100 because they never repressed it. That's why. But I love that.
The first time I ever saw Clutch was when they toured with Biohazard.
Awesome.
And it was two very different bands. The Biohazard guys are up there like rapping and rap metal and stuff, and then the Clutch guys get up there and they're playing like heavy rock and roll, and I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
But hey, it opened my eyes, man. That was I think that was really my entry into like Fu Manchu, Clutch, that whole hard rock, deserty rock, because Kyuss was in there somewhere too. Like it was right before 9/11. I think they were on tour together, Biohazard and Clutch.
I was having a debate with someone about Kyuss, and Kyuss was not on my radar when Kyuss came out. And I put something out there on Twitter. I'm like, or on Facebook, and I said, who would? I didn't say it like this, but the debate started to be like, hey, if Fugazi went back on tour, I think they could sell out like an 8 arena tour and like fill it up. They could play 3 shows in DC and sell out in like a big place. And then someone's like, no, they can't, but Kyuss can. And I was not there for Kyuss, and I feel like we have this bias towards how big Kyuss was at the time. Obviously extremely influential, but maybe just because my head at the time was fucking Repeater is the best thing ever and nothing is better than Fugazi, versus like, what, they were doing with their riffs and their desert rock there. I don't know. I really don't know, but it's an interesting debate, at least to me it was, and I've been going over it in my mind.
I mean, we get into the debates, frequently, like with other bands, and we instigate it a lot. It's like Kyuss or Fu Manchu, and most of the time, the bands will, we're all on the same page. It's like Fu Manchu is the band. I was not a Kyuss fan. I heard Wretch around the time it came out. And to me, they just sounded like a really shitty punk band. I was not into it. Now, of course, I've gone back and grown an appreciation for the albums after that. I still don't like Wretch. But I mean, I see something different than a lot of people see when they look at Kyuss. I mean, Kyuss, the influence there is quite different, even though they land in the same space as bands like Fu Manchu. I mean, Fu Manchu is very derivative of Black Sabbath plus punk rock. I really get that and feel that, and I love that. I love that marriage and that vibe. Kyuss is kind of a unique thing because you've got Josh who didn't listen to Black Sabbath. He's bringing kind of this weird mix of blues and like punk. Then you got John Garcia, who's a great singer.
Yeah.
I mean, anything the guy does turns out good because he's involved. Um, it was four really good musicians that made some really interesting music. Is it good? Yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. But the the worship that they get, it seems a little bit exaggerated to me when you compare to a prolific band like Fu Manchu, who, I mean, look at their career.
We're getting canceled. We're so getting canceled after this episode drops.
You know what? I don't give a shit. I'm speaking my mind here, man.
I don't know if Kyuss even made it as far east as Texas, really. Like, I know they did some touring and stuff, but as far as their influence, dude, I didn't know anybody in the 90s who was listening to Kyuss.
Me neither.
And it was the same thing. I'm totally shocked about how Acid Bath has come back, and they're doing these huge shows. Dude, I knew like two guys who had ever heard of Acid Bath, and one of them was my cousin who played guitar.
I just wonder if I wonder if it was the scene that we were in at the time. Like, I saw Acid Bath. They played Welcome to Rockville. 80,000 friggin' people there. People were singing along, and my northeastern Long Island / Buffalo point of view, I don't know. I came in very late to that whole thing, and I just now wonder, talking to you guys, if maybe it was the scenes that we were in just missed us, or
Dude, it's a possibility, but I'm from Louisiana.
Oh, there you go. So
come out of Louisiana. And I knew who Incubus and Soylent Green and all those guys were, and then I was like, Acid Bath? Yeah, I think they put out that one John Gacy record or something. They didn't make a huge splash like a lot of the other NOLA bands did.
It was an underground thing that came, of age through the internet and social media and that type of thing. It's kind of like the Misfits story when you think about that. I mean, you hear all those stories about seeing the Misfits in like the late 70s and early 80s and in basements and like, clubs with 60 people, and then look at them now. They're selling out arena tours.
All those people are lying. None of them saw the Misfits. They were all. Yeah, everybody got into the Misfits when Metallica put out the Garage Days Revisited record, and they said, "I'm gonna rape your mother today." That was when people got into the Misfits. They bought the tape, the collection, and that's how it all happened. And I'm proud to say I'm one of them. I've kept you longer than I promised, but I do want to ask one more question because you mentioned it in your bio. Trouble is mentioned a few times. I don't know if you're both Trouble fans, but if you are, is there a Trouble record that is the one you grab off the shelf?
So I'm the Trouble guy. And for me, it's going to be the self-titled Deaf American album. And that's the album that introduced me to them. It was kind of by farce that I got it because my mother went to a record store in like 1992 and said, "Hey, my son loves Metallica. What's a good album to buy him for Christmas?" And the guy said, "Here, you got to give him this." And so that's what I got for Christmas that year. And it was so different than what I was listening to at the time. I mean, the only band that really was doing anything slow consistently that I was into was Paradise Lost. And Trouble was so unique in that they brought these Sabbath riffs, but I mean, it's not just, it's not telling the whole story. I mean, there's a huge amount of Judas Priest influence in there. There's a very original influence that you can't really, you just got to say it's Trouble. I mean, especially when you go back to the Skull and you listen to the Psalm 9 record. I mean, what sounds like that? Nothing before. There's nothing you can point to that sounds anything like those two albums.
It's funny. I got into Trouble. It was a similar, not similar, but in a way that probably most people didn't. I saw them like it was a like Spin Magazine's like top 25 albums you haven't heard, but you should. And it was Manic Frustration. And your answer is almost right, because the right answer is Manic Frustration. Just that is
one album off.
Yeah, that's my favorite album of all time, actually.
Isn't that Ben's favorite album?
I think it is, actually. Yeah.
Oh, we need to talk to Ben. I had like a denim jacket, like hand painted with the album cover on the back and everything. I just loved it, and I love the Danzig record. So like anything Rick Rubin touches, to me at that time, like made it sound perfect.
Right.
But I'll never forget, like I was playing it for my dad, like, and he was a rock guy. He's like, I hear Paul McCartney and Wings in this. And I'm like,
oh yeah,
holy shit, you're right. There's like a Beatle-y thing happening here. And I think
Eric was a huge Beatles fan.
Yeah. I
don't think he really got to show it until that album.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm actually talking to Chuck Robinson, who worked with Eric on the solo stuff, was in trouble for a little while. We're talking next week to talk about Eric's final single that they're putting out on Ripple. But yeah, I think that another band that I think gets a lot of love now that I don't know. Like, I love them, but everyone looked at my jacket and like, what the fuck is Trouble? Like, what? Like,
well, I'll tell you this. They deserve every amount of recognition they can get.
Totally agree.
And I hope that what's happening to Acid Bath and what happened to Kyuss and the Misfits happens to them at some point. Because they truly are a great band. When you take those records up through Manic Frustration, they're 4 killer records. They really are. And they show a progression of a great band, with great guitar players.
Plastic Green Head is good too.
Plastic Green Head's good. Even the Distortion Field's a good album.
Yeah.
It's something different, but it's good.
It's definitely different, but it's they're a band to me, again, like one of those underrated bands. And like I said, like in high school, I went to high school with it, and you might know these guys, the band called Vision of Disorder. They went to my high school. Yeah. And that was the thing, right? It was Long Island hardcore. It was like, if you're in the underground, like that's the thing that's happening, not like this Beatle-esque, Sabbath-y, whatever, wasn't even stoner rock then. Anyway, guys, thank you. I've kept you longer. I would love to have you back on to talk all about music and stuff and everything else. The new record is called Empires of Stone. Came out on Ripple on the 21st. It's excellent. You guys were on Doom charts too, if I'm not mistaken, right? You guys were listed.
Yes, sir.
Very. You definitely performed well there in the top 10, which is amazing for a month that was also a pretty killer month. It was hard to make a list, given how many cool things were out. Love the record. You guys are awesome. And Jude, you guys are nice. Like, I'm going to give you that. It's nice like this. So, thank you guys. And everyone who has not heard this record, go listen to it. You guys will love it. If you like heavy, if you like, anything that's good. And in the bio, there's a bunch of bands that are mentioned, but like there's none that actually sound like you, which is also very cool. So go listen to the new Nomads record.
Thank you.
And Jude and John, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Dude, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.